I'm sitting in a Polestar 5, the Swedish electric performance car brand that is spun off from Volvo. Design in cars isn't that different from packaging design. A brand's iconic assets come through elements such as grills, indicators, headlights, and variant differentiation can be as subtle as seatbelts. Just like FMCG, meaningful brand storytelling connects with consumers emotionally to build trust and loyalty. Consumers buy into identity and experience, and that's why there is such an uproar when brands like Jaguar and Ferrari stray too far from their heritage, from the assets that made them iconic in the first place. Today, I'm talking with Brent Ellis, the Driving and Brands Experience Manager at Polestar in Sweden. Let's go. Brent, welcome to Bite Size Insights, where we talk about unpacking the world of designing brands. Coming from big corporate, I've often used the analogy when I'm trying to drive a point of difference to the team that all cars have seatbelts. So what is that difference that we can bring to consumers? And I really love the design of old cars. They feel like they came from an era of sturdiness, of beautiful design. And now it feels like they're losing their personality. Why are cars looking so homogeneous?
There's a lot of change coming in the automotive industry, and there's so many new factors that drive all of that. You know, electrification, the quest for better efficiency and greater aerodynamics, and that's why a lot of cars these days are very smooth and rounded, because they're chasing those ever, dropping numbers to make sure you can go further on a charge, for example. And that's part of the evolution of the automotive industry, and you see that through the decades. From days gone by, and those cars that had those, you sort of had a face with a car. You had the headlights and the grille. And that started to change and really become a little bit more aerodynamically driven. And of course, electric cars don't need a grille because they don't need to have all the cooling that you would with a normal combustion engine. So that changed. And you could go one of two ways. You could either go full, into electric, and the car doesn't need to look like a traditional car anymore because the packaging is different. You don't have a big engine in the front, so it can look different. It can be more sort of rounded and smoother. Or you could stick to a more traditional body style with a long bonnet and a beautiful cabin, the sort of typical sports car proportions, and still integrate the electrification. And something I'm super proud of what we've done is retain the design character of cars, that face that cars tend to have. Even though we don't have grills on our Polestar cars, you still get a sense of character when you look at the car. And there's a few brands that are still doing that. We've successfully been able to integrate electrification, all the things that you need with electrification, like good aerodynamics and efficiency, but still giving cars that character, that recognizability that humans are trained for. We're trained to recognize faces, right? And so we really didn't want to lose that, even though we were fully electric and didn't need that anymore in the cars. So it can go one of two ways, and I'm it's interesting to see how different car brands interpret that.
Yeah. I have a Polestar 3. I think I'm probably 1 in 3 people in Ohio that actually have one. I absolutely love my Polestar. And I hadn't realized this, but I had given a masterclass on sensorial design in the spring at one of the universities there. And when it came to sound design, I immediately thought of my Polestar, because when I would reverse my car, and I'm someone who has PTSD, but the sound that the car makes, and it comes from the back of the headrest, it's like a cello is making this, these deep orchestral sounds, and it's teaching literally the driver of where to turn. And there's such a sense of comfort for me. And I went and I researched this because I was giving a class on sound, and I hadn't realized that the emotional safety had been built as a design cue, if you will, when they did the reversing.
We started out as a design-led car company for this new age of electrification, and when we did that, we really designed everything. It wasn't just the car body and the marketing material. And so, there's a team of people that designed that sound. And I love hearing stories like yours when you realize that all those tiny little decisions that the teams have made to make something exactly that way, and when a consumer then recognizes that without us having told you, by the way, your car does A, B, and C.
Exactly.
That is such a reward, because you realize that what the teams are doing and the really important decisions that are going into that, especially from a safety perspective, are working, and people are recognizing that. And it's not just you inside the car, which is a really, as you've known, a great experience, but also outside the car, you know, designing the sounds that the car makes on the outside that pedestrians respond to. You know, we didn't want to make a sort of spaceship kind of futuristic sound. It was
whirring.
more the whirring kind of sounds. It's more natural, it's recognizable, you know, it's a moving object, it sounds like a car moving, you know, with natural sounds. And so, you know, that whole audio design element from a user experience perspective is super important. And yes, you have to meet legal requirements with some of those functions, but we can also still design them and engineer them to trigger that emotional sensory response, which then, as you've said, makes you feel safe. And that's super important.
When I talk about big global brands, and we're so inundated in today's economy, I mean, I'm assuming the car business is no different. You've got so many cars coming, you know, out of China, all the electric cars that are coming in. And I really believe that in order for consumers to have brand loyalty and trust, you need to have that emotional connection. And for me, I know that this is now going to be my car just because it ticks off certain emotional attributes that I really love. Great. So now let's move on to another topic, and let's talk about the driving experience of a brand. What for you, and it can be any car, it doesn't have to be Polestar, but how do you think you can further get this emotional connection that I'm talking about in a car when there's all that, you know, and I really don't know that much about the AI side and all the technical pieces that need to be updated. I'm assuming that will become all cars have seatbelt pieces.
Pretty much.
But what else in the car industry, when you're talking about brand design experience, are you looking for? What type of attributes?
You know, I spent many years as an automotive journalist before I went into automotive corporate, you know, the corporate side. And having driven so many different cars from so many different companies, especially in the mid to late 2000s and then the 2010s, you really saw how this evolution was rolling. And the era of electrification is the turning point, because electric cars share many attributes, whether it's an entry-level family car or a super sports hypercar. You know, they share many electric attributes. You know, instant acceleration, a thrill, gives you a bit of a kick when you feel that acceleration, even if it isn't the fastest car in the world. And so with electrification, it's forced manufacturers to think about how to still get that emotional response from a car that 20, 30 years ago you would have had from a screaming engine and you know, a loud exhaust pipe and stuff like that, which of course electric cars don't have. And it's very easy to build tech savvy, quick, safe, good looking electric car, but it's very difficult to make that electric car elicit that emotional response for a petrol head, you know, the typical car guys. And so we've really had a strong focus on that, and I'm lucky in my role with driving and brand experiences that to work closely with our engineers who, you know, that's their job to make sure that when someone drives a Polestar, they feel something, you know, they feel connected to the car, they feel safe, they feel confident. And that can be anything from how comfortable it is on a highway cruise when you're using some of the driver assistance functions and you're getting nice soft suspension and good sound deadening. That's part of that experience. But at the same time, when you find yourself on a nice twisty road where you want to have some fun, that you can really feel the car has come alive and is, you know, encouraging you and supporting you to have that fun driving experience that you remember from when you had a Porsche back in the 2000s, you know, that you might not have anymore. And the team behind that is really adept at reminding people of the fun you can have in a car, even though we are at the absolute cutting edge of electric cars,
Yes.
especially in today's age. So I'm really proud of how that comes across, and part of my job is to make sure that you as a consumer or a journalist or an influencer or any other demographic that we want to allow experience our vehicles, that they get to drive with cars in a way, in an environment where they're going to feel the Polestar magic, the Polestar DNA. And you always come from these events where people have a big smile on their face and think, wow, this was amazing, and you see the goosebumps and think, we nailed it. That's exactly what we wanted you to feel. So it's really rewarding. Yeah.
You mentioned petrol heads just now. We can't not talk about the subculture in cars. Yeah. In Cincinnati, we get on the Friday evening downtown, all the cars are revving. What do you call that culture when they're
the low riders and the donks.
That's right, low riders and donks. You get that. There's the Japanese subculture, to the Jeeps with ducks, and like you've mentioned, the lighthouse for cars is really this autonomous world.
Yeah.
And when I was at CES in the beginning of the year, I tried the Zoox, which, I quite liked it not having a steering wheel in the front. It was just like a capsule that you sat in and it went forward or backwards. What is the vision? What do you think about people who are the petrol heads that are still looking for that car experience?
Well, I'm one of those people. I love that I drive a tech-forward car, that when I'm driving on a long-distance journey, kind of boring, I've got driver assistance functions that are, let's say, paving the way to full autonomous driving, full self-driving cars. We still, I would say, in my opinion, a good few years away from that being the reality. But at the same time, I'm a car guy, right? So I want to still have fun, and I know that if I take a detour off that motorway, I've got a car that's going to put a smile on my face, and I'm going to be energized when I get home because I had so much fun. And I think the development of autonomous cars like the Zoox, that's a perfect example where it doesn't have a driver's seat and a steering wheel, so you're not expecting a normal car that's now being driven by a computer.
Right.
You're in something totally different, and I think that's a psychological shift that you've obviously experienced now compared to, for example, a Waymo, where you're in a Jaguar and you think, what's it doing? And you see the steering wheel going, you think, whoa, what are you doing?
Yes.
You don't have that element with something like a Zoox. And in terms of normal cars, like the cars we drive today, being fully autonomous, I kind of don't want to get into a car and push a button and wait for it to drive me to wherever I want to go, because I'm a guy who enjoys driving cars. And when we look at Polestar cars, we make cars for people to drive, right? But we obviously, of course, include the kind of technology that means that if you don't want to drive, or it's a boring road or a long journey that you want to just relax in, you've got the tech that can support you in doing that. And to me, my sort of personal take on that is it's the right balance, because I can if I want to, but I don't always want to, rather than, I own a box that takes me to work every day.
Right.
It's a totally different thing, I would say.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
We had a conversation. You took me for a ride in your Polestar 5. The acceleration on that is absolutely insane. But I had noted on the material, you had printed its sustainability source in that, and I thought that was very interesting. It seems like, that Swedish design, even the typography that is laid out, just looks absolutely beautiful. And you had mentioned the older cars, premium luxury was all about leather, and would you like to double click on that?
Yeah, and this is something that we, when we launched the brand almost a decade ago, 2017, it was really from day one, it was design. So that typography, that's our font, and the way the pattern, the perforation pattern in the leather is designed by our color and materials team, and every part of the car is thought about. So when you see that label on the back of the seat about animal welfare secured leather, we are very proud to have a leather, a premium leather in the car. But we're also proud that we've been responsible in sourcing that leather and making sure that you, the consumer who's buying a car with leather, is, you're comfortable with the role that's played. We've got all sorts of panels inside the car, some of them that you don't see, below the door panels and center consoles that are made from plant fibers or fully recycled PET bottles. Even A surfaces, those are the surfaces you feel and can see. We've got the natural flax fiber seat backs, that the design of which is a Polestar design, that allowed us to show off this material in such a cool way. But this is a car that's made out of plants in parts, and that's not something that 5-10 years ago people would have said, oh, that's premium, because it was ruched leather and Alcantara everything, and chrome all over the place. You look at your car, for example. There's no flashy chrome detailing, big badges on the back. It's very subtle, very sort of labels here and there. The
Yes.
powertrain, your seats have got the statement of recycled content in the bi-attributed vinyl that we've used there. So we're very open about what we use and how we've implemented it and where it's come from. And that's a theme that we run through everything, from all sides of the business. Our environmental impact is published, and with our methodology about how we measured it and where it comes from and how we are constantly reducing it.
Yes.
And implementing things like natural fiber composites or recycled plastics, of course, drives that down.
Yes.
Every car we make, and every year we keep dropping the carbon impact of the cars, and it's so amazing to see.
That's incredible. I mean, I know from a packaging standpoint, Europe is the driver. And just being a couple of days here in Sweden, I think you were showing me one of the bridges were demolished and taken down and recycled, and that went into Volvo.
Yeah, that made its way back into the Volvo chain. It's amazing, right?
But the mindset here is a lot different to
Oh,
the
yeah.
US when it comes to sustainability.
Yeah.
Brent, that is incredible. Thank you so much for spending some time
You're
with
so
me,
welcome.
and I really appreciate it.
It was lovely, thank you.
Thank